Why psychology? Why? You know, some of you. Why did you choose psychology? Come on, speak. A reason. How you can make? Yep, absolutely. Any other reasons? Helping people. Yeah. Okay. Well, when I first thought about psychology, actually, it wasn't psychology. I was going to be a professional footballer. And my parents said, look, son, there's no money in sport. No, I haven't got a hang-up about it now, but I've got a hang-up about it now when I look at Wayne Rooney and all these others. I wasn't going to be like Wayne Rooney, but ultimately they said, no money in sport, son, get into education. And the problem in this country, I think, is actually if you are pretty talented in sport, it's either one or the other. Okay, well, that's what it was like for me, anyway. And so I actually left school with not very many qualifications. And that was a challenge for me. So I went out into the world of work and started on a very, very slow process by which I then eventually found psychology, and actually that then brought me forward. So worked in an organisation, took on, I take on the work ethic, so I absolutely agree with this whole sense of work ethic, that's so important. And then I did all my education via night school, psychology, philosophy, all those kind of things. And then eventually the organisation saw that I was performing quite well, and actually they supported me to go off to university. So I went to UCL, and I did my first degree at UCL, and that was phenomenal, and I loved every moment of it. Made some good friends there, and I'm also still in contact with UCL. I don't know if you've ever heard of Adrian Furnham, a professor that tends to publish as he speaks, and he tends to sort of publishes 300 or 400 articles a week for some reason. I don't know how he does it, but that's what he does. And I'm good friends with Adrian, and we stay in touch, and we work together collaboratively, and it's fantastic. Then did my master's up here in Nottingham, and then decided to go out there into the world of work as an occupational psychologist in training, the practitioner in training. Did a few years out there in the field, and then just decided I wanted to set up my own business. So set up my own business, Zeal, initially as a partnership, but now as a limited company. But along the way, I also decided just to add a little bit more weight to my shoulders, I'll do the PhD part-time. Okay, so running a business, trying to find new business, and then doing the PhD as well. My wife, if you ever ask her what I'm like, she'll say you're a workaholic, and I am a workaholic, but I'm also passionate about psychology. I'm passionate about what it can do and how it can bring a difference and make a difference to people's lives. When I was doing my PhD, I brought this up because I want you to read it very quickly, and I know that we're going to be sort of short of time. When I was doing my PhD, I essentially won a significant amount of funding from the Health and Safety Executive on a concept looking at evaluating violence management training in healthcare settings. But for me, a challenge for psychology is always this notion of translation. How do we get people out there to understand what it is that we do? And also, how do we get them to understand that what we do is of use to them? Okay? And it certainly is a challenge within the occupational field where I work. And a few years ago, I remember writing a letter to lots of organisations saying, I'm a PhD student, I'd like to be able to evaluate your violence management training. And a few other words were in the letter. And essentially I got rejected on every single count. So I wrote probably about 60 or 70 letters, and everyone said no. When I phoned up, I said, why not? They said, because we've got training. Why do we need somebody like you to try and evaluate it? What is that going to do? So I became quite frustrated by this. I decided, right, what I'm going to do is write a scenario. So I wrote this scenario at that time. Now, Stress Less Limited now exists as a company. I know this is being recorded, so this has nothing to do with you. They didn't exist at this point. But I thought, I'm going to write this scenario, and then I'm going to send the scenario to those people that said no to me. Okay, so Stress Less Limited recently announced the production of a new wellbeing pill. This pill yet to go through any form of medical animal human trial. It's being released for human consumption. It's a revolutionary drug, said to bring about a sense of relaxation and balance to life, and it might also assist in the control of blood pressure. The consequences or side effects of the pill are not known. The pill can be purchased direct from the Stress Less internet site, and it's said to be so powerful they need to take one pill once a year to achieve the stated benefits. Sounds good, yeah? Who wants one? Was my question to that lot out there. Sometimes I put this up in a room of people, and sometimes when people are feeling really burnt out and tired at work, they say, yes, I'll have some, please. Some people say, is there a backlog in terms of ordering? Yeah. How many? But look, out there in organisations, sometimes there is mandatory training. They have to take training on. So I said to them, if it's mandatory that you have to have Stress Less, the pill, what would you want to see first? So if you had to take this pill, what would you want to see first? Anything? Side effects? What else? Trials? Anything else? Results? Yeah? So it's been approved anyway? Who are stress less? What are the ingredients? Do I actually really need it in the first place? How much did it cost? And so on and so forth. Lots of questions that we could ask about the stress less pill. And we do that with medicine, don't we? Very regularly. But when it comes to training interventions, what you notice is we don't ask those questions. We have a training intervention, therefore it's okay. Out of the 60 or 70 rejections, I then received immediately phone calls from 25 saying, yes, we'd like you to come back and actually evaluate our program, please. So I then evaluated the training programs, and we did a series of studies, or I did a series of studies. And during my studies, essentially what I found, out of the 25 organisations that took part, in 19, the training was having no impact whatsoever on any of the staff. Okay? So you may as well put staff in a room like this, giving them a packet of polos or whatever it is that they like, and a newspaper, and actually you probably would have had better effects in terms of their health because they're out of the world of work. In 3, the training was actually having significant worsening effects. So people were coming out fearing themselves, fearing their colleagues, fearing patients, fearing everything. Okay? And in 3, positive effects. And I was able to then actually use this process, use my evaluation study to demonstrate why these training programs were having differences. Okay. And that became my PhD, and off I went and applied that information, particularly in healthcare settings. So a key skill that I think is really important for any psychologist, any up-and-coming psychologist, is this notion of translation, because that's what that is. I'm trying to translate our practice here. I'm trying to translate this whole theory of evaluation into practice. How do I get people to think on my wavelength? Okay? Because as soon as I mentioned evaluation, they said no. But when I mentioned this, they said yes. Okay. So what do? I'm going to give you a bit of a macro look, because obviously I run a company, and that means different things, and I do try and make sure that I'm involved in as many projects as possible, because I also, I'm HCPC registered, and I have to maintain my development. But Zeal, we are scientific research-based consultancy I have research and applied psychologists that we employ. Okay, so people who are heavily into their research, but we're also applied practitioners. Okay, so they love their stats, they like all that kind of stuff, and we work together and we have a lot of fun. We have 3 branches. One is around how you diagnose, particularly in organisational settings. How do you make sense of what's going on? What do you then do with that evidence to help intervene and change? And then, importantly, if you're doing something around the organisation, how do we know if it's working? What's the impact that it's having? Okay, and everything that we do is underpinned by evidence. And when we use this word evidence out there, people say, oh, no, that sounds like it's going to be a very long project. It's going to sound like it's going to cost us a lot of money. And actually, it doesn't necessarily mean that. What I'm going to do, I'm also just going to show you some of the things that we work on. So I'll flick through these very quickly because I know I'm short of time. But these are just some of the projects that we have on in terms of Zeal. So we spend a lot of time looking at organisations and say, how do you make organisations healthier? Okay, because when you talk to a lot of people out there in the workplace, I think they're not looking for more money. They're looking for other things in terms of a meaningful job, good social relationships in the workplace. Okay. The sense I've got a career path and I'm going somewhere. That's what's important to me. I'd like the money, but actually if I don't have these other things, I don't want to work there. It becomes an important issue, and we help organisations make sense of this and help them to make changes so that people are happy in the workplace. So a question for you quickly, if you're looking at a workforce, if you're looking at an organisation, what does a psychologically healthy workforce look like in your view? What would they look like? If you're looking now over the top, and you're looking at an organisation, what would you see if they were psychologically healthy in your view? Would you see them looking like this? No? What would they look like? Smiley. What else? Engaged. Excited. Any other things? Yeah. I'll bring them all up because I know we haven't got time. But look, these are things that people say to us. They've got to be physically healthy, low or no stress. They've got to be proud of what they do. They're happy. They're motivated. They're feeling resilient. They're hopeful about the future. They're striving. They're confident, and so on and so forth. Lots and lots and lots of terms that are put across. And again, I ask these questions of lots of people out there and lots of organisations, and I say, well, if this is what psychological health looks like, then why do we see this? Continuously. This tells me that psychology is not being activated upon or utilised enough, and I know there's some really good research out there, but it's that translation into practice. You know, and you go along, and we've seen it today, I think it's today, isn't it? It's been the doctor's strike again, where we devalue, we're demoralised, we're depressed. We work with most NHS trusts and actually all ambulance services. This is still the number one factor for ambulance services. Stress at work is the number one factor for them, okay, in terms of the problems they face. Yesterday I was giving a talk to an organisation and the other week to a bunch of chief executives, and I've actually told them that maybe they need to rebrand their organisations. Maybe now they should publish hazard warnings. You know, when you go and buy a sandwich, I haven't got a sandwich here, but you know it's got like salt intake and it's either green, amber or red. It's got the saturates on there, green, amber or red. Sugar, green, amber or red. So I basically said to them, why don't we put stress, frustration, burnout, etc., etc. In terms of our literature, green, amber or red. Because if we do that, or if they do that, then actually I think they'll start to take this stuff a little bit more seriously. Okay. I also play with them a bit. I don't know if you've ever been to America, and if you watch American TV, and you know if there's ever any medication on the TV, what do they tend to say immediately after they publicise some medication? The side effects, yes. So with one organisation, I say, well, why don't you actually just publicise your organisation and say, come and work for us, and we'll guarantee that you will suffer from depression, lack of sleep, frustration, you know, conflict, etc., etc. You know, sell the benefits. Yeah. And why is this? And I tell you why is because I think we're out there and we are able to deal with the physical health. And we see it all the time. We hear about it all the time. Even my daughter, who's only 2.5, when she has an ouchie, she says, Daddy, I need a plaster. So she's already understanding that plasters tend to fix. Okay, but in organisations, plasters don't fix. The sticking plaster is a problem. Okay, and I think there is this huge gap, and you can't see that picture. It's not a very nice picture, but certainly the psychological health of staff in organisations is something that is very neglected. Okay, and it's misunderstood. So this is what we do as occupational psychologists in this area. And sometimes in the workplace, the way I see it, and the way I explain it to people, the way in which they're behaving with each other, it's almost as if someone has a wound, a physical wound, you're not allowing that physical wound to heal, you just keep rubbing it and rubbing it and rubbing it and making it worse. That's what you're doing in terms of the psychological health of your people. And when you say that, they go, didn't realise that. Maybe we need to rethink. So we spend time doing things like that. We spend time trying to help people understand the culture within which they operate and they exist. What's it like in there? What's the environment like? Is it one that's a little bit turbulent? Or is it one where you have got happiness? We look at teamwork. How do you make people work better together? I'm living in Leicester. And so I'm in Leicester, so therefore I have to kind of not support Leicester City, who are doing extremely well in the league. But certainly I look at Ranieri as a manager, and I think he's doing something. The Ranieri effect. So what's going on in terms of his team? Okay. And science that we engage in, the research that we engage in with multiple teams across the country in various pockets of the UK, we look at this whole notion of teamwork. We also look at the whole notion of the romance of teamwork, where people think that teamwork actually will produce greater performance, and it's not necessarily the case. Okay, so we shouldn't just assume that by putting people together you get great performance. So we look at teamwork and how you bring people together. We're also involved in a lot of projects where we have to choose, we have to select people, and we have to ensure they're able to cope with, in this country, threat, terrorism, those kinds of things. Okay, so we have to help them essentially find the right people. Remove the haystack, get those needles. Find those people that will actually be able to cope with these various situations, like the London bombs. This country has behind the scenes, there's a series of security meetings that go on continuously based on the spate of terrorist attacks that we've seen in Paris and in Brussels, etc., etc. We have specialist teams in this country all set up to respond to those situations. Our role is to make sure they remain psychologically sound, and they also have good systems around them when they respond to those things. Okay. We also look at effective leadership. What makes for a great leader in the workplace? We've got a lot of research on this, and we do a lot of work on this. And just to demonstrate something to you, this is something out of one of our surveys. We have lots of surveys. We follow people longitudinally, so this is a bit of cross-sectional plus validated longitudinally. We ask people, who do you turn to for support? How much support is available to you in the workplace? From people like family and friends, your work colleagues, your line manager, and so on and so forth. From no support at all at 1 to 5, a great deal of support. People tend to say they turn to their family and friends more when it comes to their needs and their problems at work. For us, as psychologists, understanding not just who you go to, but what does it do to you. Where it's green, it's good, and where it's red, it's not so good in terms of health outcomes. And sorry about the technical demonstration of the data here, smiley faces, sad faces. We tend to find when we go to the world of work out there, they tend to understand these things. I'd like to show other data, but I'm told off. What you see along the top are health outcomes that have been measured both cross-sectionally and longitudinally. Job satisfaction, commitment to the workplace, engagement, stress symptoms, post-traumatic stress, burnout, quitting intentions, and confidence in the delivery of care. And what this shows you is when people turn to their family and friends, and they turn to them the most, it essentially has negative effects on their health. But yet, we turn to family and friends the most. The ones that tend to have the better effects are people like the line managers, the leaders in the workplace. So we use evidence like this to say, look, it shows you as a leader in an organisation, you are an important person. Yeah? You can affect the health of your staff very rapidly. Okay? Look at that line there. Even down here, when people are accessing certain people, like senior managers, between no and a little support, the effects are fantastic and they're positive. So we do things as well where we monitor staff health and well-being on a continuous basis, and we track people annually to check that they are okay and what's affecting their health and well-being. And we also do things where we develop learning systems and we try and engage people into learning better about these kind of psychological concepts like the growth mindset and stress and so on and so forth. And we're even into technology because now everybody's got an app, so we have an app and all those kinds of things that go with it. And we have fun doing this kind of stuff within the workplace. But ultimately, what we're there to try and do, we're just trying to translate psychology into practice. We're just trying to make organisations out there be better at what they do and get better potential out of their people. That's all we're doing, okay? But using psychology as our medium. All our projects, just to let you know this, they involve conducting research using different methods. And it is very important that the team know, understand, and they know how to apply good theory. They hate me because I make them read lots of science. I make them read lots of research. They actually don't hate me because they love doing it, to be honest. They spend a lot of time analysing, making sense of data, doing various things. So certainly using now R and doing structural equation models and all that kind of stuff. So certainly they have to be fairly good at their statistics. And also they have to be confident in terms of presenting to clients and actually getting a message across. Very important. And then finally, obviously, writing reports and articles and trying to get this stuff out there becomes a very important part of their daily lives. In terms of my job, my worst bit is this. I hate paperwork. Okay, and when it comes down on me, I'm thinking, oh, God, I've got to do this. And I certainly have to do it as somebody who runs a business. I have to manage all those other things where I just want to get out there and do the psychology. That's what matters to me. But actually, I have another responsibility where I have to make sure the business is running on and it's doing what it needs to do. But certainly, paperwork at any level tends not to really turn me on. The stuff that does turn me on is this. So that's not me up there, by the way. But certainly, we like to collect data wherever we can, and we like to use different methods to collect data. We love using statistics, and whether it's SPSS, R, or other types of software that's out there, we certainly would do that. And I love theory. You'll I put Bandura up there because you probably recognise Bandura and you come across Bandura's theory in terms of social cognitive models, self-efficacy and all that kind of stuff. And we certainly utilise theories like this on a daily basis in terms of the organisations that we work with. And certainly what we love to do is apply the science and go out there and work with people and make sure they understand what it is that we are that we're doing. My advice, and I'm going to add one more to that, certainly be passionate about the topic. When I'm selecting psychologists to come and work with me, not for me, but with me, certainly the key thing I'm looking for is, are they passionate about this topic? Do they really believe in it? Do they really want to do something with it? Because it certainly drives them forward and it explains a lot of the variance in terms of people's behaviour. I always want them to learn. Never feel that you've come to that sense of, I've got all the knowledge I need and you hit that capacity point. So have that attitude of learning. The work ethic is absolutely right. I totally agree with that. You know, people are hard workers. They certainly get along. You know, we've had talented people who've worked for us in the past, but actually they weren't necessarily gelling with the rest of the team. They thought they just had it all, and that was it. Didn't work in our culture. And so I say to my staff, be brave. We're there to support them at every point. And so I like it when they stand up and go, do you know what? I'm going to have a go at that. That's fine. And that's what I want. I want them to be brave with their topic. And the fifth point I would say is be a bit boundaryless. Certainly when we work, I lecture at the University of Nottingham for MSc students, and when you talk to some of the students there certainly are they're blinkered in terms of occupational psychology as an example, and we say, look, be boundaryless, look across, read other topics, read different domains, open up your mind, and certainly allow yourself to grow. So that would be my advice. Certainly read the documentation that's come out from the BPS, because I think it's useful and it's got everything in there in terms of becoming an occupational psychologist. So I'm hoping that was useful. That's me. That's what it's like. These are some of the projects. Thank you very much.